The yellow school bus sat motionless, trapped like a canary in a cage of chrome and steel. Mr. Barnaby Grist's knuckles had gone white on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, all he could see was an endless wall of motorcycles, hundreds of them, gleaming in the morning sun like the scales of some monstrous metal dragon. Behind those bikes stood men, big men, tattooed men, men whose leather cuts bore the same skull and crossbones patch, Gravel Kings MC. And walking toward the bus, through that sea of iron and anger, was Caleb, ironclad Vance. In Grist's sweating palm, his cell phone trembled. Yes, 911. I need police. I'm being surrounded by a gang. But the thing about small towns is that everyone knows everyone. And what Mr. Grist didn't know yet, what he was about to learn in the most humiliating way possible, was that you don't mess with a biker's kid and expect to just drive away. Especially not when that biker could summon an army with a single phone call. The alarm clock's beep was gentle. Caleb had learned years ago that Leo needed soft awakenings. Anything too sudden would startle the boy, especially before his hearing aids were in. Morning, champ, Caleb whispered, kneeling beside his son's bed. Leo's small face was peaceful in sleep, one hand curled under his cheek. At 8 years old, he still looked impossibly fragile to his father, like something the world could break if Caleb wasn't careful. Leo's eyes fluttered open. He smiled when he saw his dad, that gap-toothed grin that made every sleepless night worth it. Dad, Leo sighed, his small fingers moving in the morning light filtering through the curtains. His voice came out soft and slightly slurred. He was still learning to modulate without being able to hear himself clearly. Let's get you ready, buddy. Caleb helped Leo sit up, then reached for the hearing aids on the nightstand. The devices were small, flesh-colored, expensive as hell. Caleb worked double shifts at the garage and pulled weekend security for the club to afford them. He'd work triple if he had to. As he carefully fitted them into Leo's ears, adjusting the volume, Caleb's fingers, scarred and tattooed, used to wrenches and handlebars, moved with practiced gentleness. How's that? Good. Leo nodded, then winced slightly. A little loud. Yeah. Caleb adjusted the left one down a notch. Better. Better. In the kitchen, Caleb made pancakes while Leo colored at the table, his tongue poking out in concentration as he worked on a drawing of a motorcycle. The morning routine was sacred, just the two of them, before the world came calling. You got everything for school? Caleb asked, flipping a pancake with the kind of precision that came from doing something 1,000 times. Uh-huh. Math homework's in my backpack. Good man. Caleb slid 3 pancakes onto Leo's plate, then added a smiley face with whipped cream. Leo giggled. The sound slightly too loud, but Caleb never corrected him. Let the kid be loud. Let him take up space in a world that tried to make him small. At 7:30, they walked to the bus stop together. Caleb wore his cut, the leather vest that marked him as Sergeant-at-Arms of the Gravel Kings. The skull on the back seemed to watch everything, and the patches told a story written in chrome and gasoline. Rochester chapter, 1% respect few, fear none. Other parents at the bus stop kept their distance. That was fine. Caleb wasn't there to make friends. He was there to make sure his son got on the bus safely. The yellow bus rumbled around the corner, its brakes squealing. Caleb felt Leo's hand tighten in his. You okay? Leo nodded, but didn't look up. Something flickered across his face, something Caleb couldn't quite read. The bus doors hissed open. Behind the wheel sat Mr. Barnaby Grist, 50-something, soft around the middle, with the kind of face that looked like it had been sucking on lemons for 30 years. Their eyes met. Grist's lip curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Morning, Caleb said evenly. Grist didn't respond. Instead, he deliberately stopped the bus 3 feet from the curb, right where yesterday's rain had left a massive puddle. Hurry up, Vance, Grist called out the door. We're on a schedule. Leo had to jump the puddle, his backpack nearly pulling him backward. He made it, but barely, his sneakers squelching with water. Caleb's jaw tightened. He watched his son climb the steps, saw how Leo kept his head down, how he moved quickly past the driver like he was trying to be invisible. The doors closed. Through the window, Caleb could see Leo, finding a seat near the front, alone. Always alone. As the bus pulled away, Caleb caught Grist's eyes in the side mirror. The driver was smiling now, a smug, satisfied smirk that made Caleb's fists clench. It's fine, Caleb told himself, forcing his fingers to relax. Leo's fine. It's just a bus ride. But that feeling in his gut, the one that had kept him alive through bar fights and bad runs, wouldn't let go. Inside the bus, Leo slid into his usual seat and tried to make himself small. The vinyl seat was cracked and uncomfortable, but at least it was close to the front, where Mr. Grist couldn't pick on him as much. That hope died quickly. Vance, Grist's voice crackled through the bus's cheap speakers. Sit in the back. That seat's reserved. Leo's heart sank. But nobody sits here. Did I ask for your opinion? Move. Now. 20 pairs of eyes turned to watch as Leo gathered his backpack and shuffled toward the rear of the bus. His cheeks burned. He could hear some of the other kids whispering, but with his hearing aids he couldn't tell if they were laughing at him or just talking. The back of the bus was where the 8th graders sat, the big kids who smelled like body spray and took up 2 seats each. Leo found a spot by the window and pressed himself against the glass. Hey, can you even hear me? One of the 8th graders, a kid named Travis, leaned over. I said, nice ears, robot boy. Leo pretended not to hear. That was easier than responding. If he responded, Travis would just make fun of how he talked. The bus lurched forward, and Grist's voice came over the speaker again. Everyone seated? Good. And Vance, try not to break anything back there with those Frankenstein ears. A few kids laughed. Leo felt his eyes start to burn, but he blinked the tears back. Dad always said crying didn't solve anything. Dad also said to stand up for yourself, but Dad didn't understand. You couldn't stand up to a grown-up. Adults had all the power, especially adults with a steering wheel. The morning ride took 20 minutes. For Leo, it felt like 20 hours. Every time Grist hit the brakes a little too hard, Leo's backpack would slide off the seat. Every time he leaned forward to grab it, Travis would kick it further away. Whoops. Butterfingers. Oh wait. Can you even hear me say sorry? By the time they reached school, Leo's hands were shaking. He waited for everyone else to file off the bus before gathering his things. As he passed Grist's seat, he kept his eyes down. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Vance, Grist said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. Try not to hold up the line this afternoon. Some of us have lives to get to. Leo nodded and hurried down the steps, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He didn't tell anyone about the bus. Not his teacher, not the school counselor who sometimes checked in on him. Definitely not his dad. Because if he told Dad, Dad would get angry. And when Dad got angry, people got scared. And Leo didn't want to be the kid whose biker dad scared the bus driver. He just wanted to be normal. The storm hit during last period. Leo was in math class, working on fractions, when the first crack of thunder rattled the windows. The lights flickered. Mrs. Henderson paused her lesson. Looks like we're in for some weather, class, she said cheerfully, as if the sudden darkness wasn't ominous at all. But don't worry, you'll all make it to your buses just fine. By the time the final bell rang, rain was hammering the roof like bullets. Leo packed his backpack slowly, methodically checking that he had everything. Math book, homework folder, pencil case. The routine was soothing, even as anxiety knotted his stomach. The buses would be late. They always were when it rained. He hurried down the hallway, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. Other kids were running, laughing, holding folders over their heads as they dashed toward the buses. Leo couldn't run that fast. His backpack was heavy, and the hearing aids made him dizzy if he moved too quickly. By the time he reached the bus lane, most of the buses were already pulling away. Bus 12, his bus, was at the far end, engine rumbling. Through the rain-streaked windows, Leo could see it was already full. He started running. Wait. His voice came out too loud, too desperate. Wait, please. He was maybe 20 feet away when he saw Mr. Grist's face in the driver's mirror. Their eyes met. Grist saw him. Leo was certain he saw him. The driver's hand moved to the door lever. For one hopeful second, Leo thought he'd wait. Then Grist smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible through the rain, but Leo saw it. Saw the way his lips curved up in satisfaction. The doors hissed shut. No, wait. Mr. Grist. Leo's feet pounded the pavement. His backpack slammed against his spine with each step. Please. The bus lurched forward. Its tail lights glowed red through the downpour, mocking him. Leo ran faster. His lungs burned. Rain streamed into his eyes, into his hearing aids. He could hear them starting to crackle and pop with moisture. Ahead, the bus picked up speed, pulling onto the main road. He ran until his foot caught on something. A pothole, maybe, or a crack in the asphalt. His backpack's weight pulled him backward and down. He hit the ground hard. Water splashed up around him, soaking through his jeans, his jacket. His palms scraped against wet concrete. The bus disappeared around the corner. Leo lay there for a moment, rain pounding his back, watching his bus drive away. His hearing aids were screeching now, water damage. He yanked them out, and the world went muffled and distant. Slowly he got to his feet. Water ran down his face. Rain mixed with tears, though he told himself it was just rain. His hands were bleeding a little where he'd scraped them. His backpack felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The school was already locked. The janitor had shut the doors the moment the last bus pulled out. Everyone else was gone. Home was 3 miles away. Leo started walking. Caleb heard the front door open at 4:47 p.m. He knew because he'd been checking his watch every 5 minutes since 4 o'clock, when Leo's bus was supposed to drop him off. At 4:15, he'd called the school. No answer. Everyone had gone home. At 4:30, he'd started pacing. Now, at 4:47, when his son finally walked through the door, Caleb felt his heart stop. Leo was soaked. Not just damp, soaked. Water dripped from his hair, his clothes, pooled around his sneakers. His face was flushed, his eyes glassy. He was shivering so hard his teeth chattered. Leo. Caleb crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to one knee. What happened? Where's the bus? I missed it. Leo's voice was barely audible without his hearing aids. I'm sorry, Dad. I ran, but Mr. Grist. Slow down, buddy. Come here. Caleb wrapped his arms around his son, not caring that water immediately soaked through his shirt. Leo was burning up. You're on fire. How long were you out in the rain? I don't know. I had to walk. Leo's words came out in gasps between shivers. I couldn't hear anything. My hearing aids got wet, and... Chill. It's okay. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. Caleb carried Leo to the bathroom, started the shower running hot. While Leo stripped out of his wet clothes, Caleb grabbed towels, dry sweats, blankets. His hands moved on autopilot, but his mind was racing. He had to walk. 3 miles. In a storm. 20 minutes later, Leo was bundled on the couch in flannel pajamas and 3 blankets, holding a mug of hot chocolate. His face was still flushed with fever, 102.4, according to the thermometer. Caleb sat beside him, one hand on Leo's forehead. Tell me exactly what happened. Leo's story came out in pieces. The rain. Running for the bus. Mr. Grist seeing him. The doors closing. Walking home. With each sentence, Caleb felt something cold and hard forming in his chest. He saw you. Leo nodded miserably. I think so. I mean, I was right there, and he looked at me, and then he just drove away. Caleb said nothing for a long moment. He just sat there, his hand on his son's burning forehead, feeling that cold thing in his chest growing colder, harder, sharper. Did you tell anyone at school? No. Why not? Leo looked down at his hot chocolate. Because I didn't want you to get in trouble. Me? Why would I? Because you'd get mad. And when you get mad, people get scared. And I didn't want to be the weird kid whose dad had to come yell at the bus driver. Caleb's throat tightened. His son, his brave, gentle, 8-year-old son, had walked 3 miles in a thunderstorm because he was trying to protect him. Leo, look at me. He waited until Leo's fever-bright eyes met his. You were never supposed to protect me. You understand? I'm the dad. That's my job. And if someone hurts you, if someone leaves you in the rain, that's not you being weak. That's them being a coward. But, no buts. You tell me these things. Always. Got it. Leo nodded, then leaned against Caleb's shoulder. I'm really tired, Dad. I know, buddy. Sleep. I've got you. While Leo dozed fitfully on the couch, Caleb pulled out his phone. His first call was to the school district's transportation office. A bored voice answered. Transportation. How can I help you? My son was left at school in a thunderstorm. I need to speak to a supervisor about bus 12. Name. Leo Vance. He's 8. Your driver saw him and drove away anyway. A pause. Keyboard clicking. According to our records, bus 12 departed on time. If your son missed the bus, that's not the driver's responsibility. Caleb's grip on the phone tightened. He didn't miss the bus. He was there. The driver saw him and left him behind. Sir, our drivers follow strict schedules. If your son was late, he wasn't late. He was 20 feet away. More keyboard clicking. I'm showing bus 12 had no reported incidents today. Without proof of misconduct, there's nothing we can do. Perhaps you should ensure your son arrives earlier. Perhaps you should ensure your driver isn't a... Sir, if you're going to use that tone, I'll have to end this call. Caleb forced himself to breathe. Forced the words out evenly. Fine. Who do I need to speak with to file a formal complaint? You can email our supervisor at... An email. You want me to send an email about my son being abandoned in a storm? That's our procedure, yes. Now if there's nothing else. The line went dead. Caleb sat there in the gathering darkness, listening to Leo's labored breathing, looking at his phone's blank screen. He thought about smashing the phone, about driving to the school and dragging Grist out of his car, about doing what the old Caleb would have done, the one from before Leo, before he'd learned that being a father meant swallowing rage and following rules. But then Leo whimpered in his sleep, and Caleb looked at his son, small and sick and trusting him to make it right. They want to play by the rules? Caleb thought, standing up slowly. Fine. Let's see how they like it when I follow my own. He walked to the closet and pulled out his cut, the leather vest that hadn't just been cleaned in weeks. The Gravel King's skull on the back seemed to grin at him in the dim light. Caleb pulled it on, feeling its familiar weight settle on his shoulders. Then he pulled out his phone and opened a group chat. The message he sent was short. Church. Tonight. 9 p.m. Emergency. Within seconds, the responses started rolling in. Roger that. On my way. What's the play, Sergeant? Caleb looked at his sleeping son one more time. Then he typed. Someone hurt my kid. We're going to teach him what happens when you mess with the Gravel Kings. The Gravel Kings clubhouse sat on the edge of town, in an old industrial building that had once been a steel mill. The main room smelled like motor oil and cigarettes, with a long bar on one side and a pool table that had seen better days. The walls were covered in photographs, bikes, brothers, runs to Sturgis and Daytona. In the center of the room was a large wooden table, scarred and stained, where church was held. By 9 p.m., every seat was filled. Dutch, the club president, sat at the head of the table. At 62, he was lean and weathered like old leather, with a white beard and eyes that had seen everything twice. To his right sat Caleb, still wearing his cut, his jaw tight. Around the table, Sparky, the club's master mechanic, with grease under his nails and a cigarette behind his ear. Boomer, road captain, built like a refrigerator with a beard. Tiny, who was anything but, standing 6'6" and weighing close to 300 pounds. Hack, their tech guy, who looked more like an accountant than a biker. And a dozen others. All of them family, all of them brothers. Dutch rapped his knuckles on the table. Church is now in session. Ironclad called this meeting. Floor's yours, brother. Caleb stood. For a moment, he just looked at the faces around the table. Men he'd bled with, ridden with, trusted with his life. Most of you know my son, Leo, he began. He's 8. He's got a hearing disability. He's shy. He's gentle. He's a good kid. His voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. Today, a school bus driver, a man whose job is to protect children, saw my son running for the bus in a thunderstorm and deliberately drove away. Leo walked 3 miles home in the rain. He's got a 102-degree fever and water-damaged hearing aids that cost me $3,000. Silence. Then Tiny spoke up. You got a name on this driver? Barnaby Grist. Hack was already typing on his phone. Found him. Lives on Maple Street. Drives bus 12 for Harrison Elementary. I want him fired, someone said. Fuck fired, another voice added. I want him in the hospital. Caleb held up a hand. I called the school. They gave me the bureaucratic runaround. Said there's no proof. Said Leo should have been on time. He paused. They hid behind their rules and their schedules and their procedures. So I figured, if they want to talk about rules and schedules. He looked around the table. Maybe we should show them what happens when their rules meet ours. Dutch leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. You got a plan, Sergeant? I do. But I need all of you. Brother, Boomer rumbled. You had us at someone hurt your kid. What's the play? Caleb pulled out his phone and showed them a map. This is the bus route. Every morning, bus 12 has to take Henderson Road. There's no other way to get to the elementary school from the south side. It's a two-lane road, no alternate routes. He looked up. What if, tomorrow morning, that road wasn't accessible? Understanding dawned around the table. Sparky started laughing. You want to block the road? Not just block it, Caleb said. I want to own it. I want that bus to come around the corner, and see something that'll make Grist piss himself. I want him to understand, in his bones, that he doesn't get to hurt kids and hide behind a steering wheel. Dutch was grinning now. How many bikes you thinking? All of them. Ours, every charter within 50 miles. Plus I want to call in favors with the Teamsters, get some big rigs involved. You want to shut down a public road with motorcycles and semi-trucks, Hack said slowly. That's actually brilliant. It's more than that, Caleb continued. It's a message, not just to Grist, to the whole damn school system. They think they can ignore us because we're blue-collar? Because we wear cuts instead of suits? Tomorrow morning, they're going to learn what real power looks like. Tiny cracked his knuckles. I'm in. Hell yes, Sparky added. Around the table, heads nodded. These were men who understood loyalty. Men who'd grown up being dismissed by people like Grist. People who thought a paycheck and a title made them better. Dutch stood up. All in favor of Ironclad's plan. Every hand went up. Motion passes. Sparky, start calling the charters. Boomer, reach out to the Teamsters. Tell them one of our brothers needs muscle. Hack, I want you to make sure this stays clean legally. We're blocking a road, not committing assault. On it, Hack said. I'll check the public assembly laws. Might even pull a permit if we need one. Everyone else, Dutch continued, spread the word. I want every bike we can get on Henderson Road by 6 a.m. tomorrow. And I mean every bike. He paused. This isn't just about Ironclad's kid anymore. How many of our children have been looked down on by people like this bus driver? How many times have we been told we're not good enough because we don't fit their mold? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Tomorrow, Dutch said, his voice rising. We show them that when you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. When you leave a child in the rain, you answer to the Gravel Kings. The room erupted in shouts and the pounding of fists on the table. Caleb felt his phone vibrating in his pocket. Texts coming in from other charters, other clubs. Word was already spreading through the network. The Iron Wolves from Buffalo. The Road Devils from Syracuse. Even the mongrels from across the state line were offering to ride. By the time church adjourned at midnight, the plan was set. Tomorrow morning, Henderson Road would become a fortress of chrome and steel. And Mr. Barnaby Grist was going to learn a lesson he'd never forget. At 12:30 a.m., Sparky made his 18th phone call of the night. Road Devils, this is Ripper. Ripper, it's Sparky from the Gravel Kings. I got a situation. On the other end of the line, he could hear a motorcycle engine idling down. What kind of situation? The kind where a school bus driver left an 8-year-old kid, one of our brother's kids, in a thunderstorm. Kid's got hearing problems, had to walk 3 miles home. Now he's sick as hell. Silence. Then, what do you need? Bodies and bikes. Henderson Road, Rochester. 6 a.m. tomorrow. We're shutting it down. How many you got so far? Our chapter's 40 strong. Iron Wolves are sending 20. Black Widows are sending 15. I'm hoping for 200 total. Another pause. Then Ripper laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. 200? Brother, you're thinking too small. Give me an hour. I'll have the whole Northeast Corridor calling you. Ripper, you don't have to. The hell I don't. You're talking about a kid. A disabled kid. Any man who'd leave a child in a storm deserves what's coming to him. We'll be there. The line went dead. Sparky looked at his phone, then up at Caleb, who was sitting at the bar nursing a whiskey. We might have started something. Good, Caleb said quietly. Across the clubhouse, Boomer was on his own phone, talking to his contact at the Teamsters. Yeah, Jimmy, I know it's late. No, I wouldn't call if it wasn't important. Listen, you remember when we helped you guys out during the strike in 22? Well, I'm calling in that favor. By 1 a.m., Hack had confirmed that blocking the road would technically qualify as a peaceful assembly, protected under state law, as long as they weren't damaging property or threatening anyone. We might get noise complaints, he said, but nothing criminal. And I'll have our lawyer on standby, just in case. By 2 a.m., the calls had spread beyond the immediate region. Charters from Pennsylvania were offering to ride. A club from Vermont was already on the road. Someone had posted about it on a closed biker forum, and the responses were flooding in. We stand with the Gravel Kings. Nobody messes with a kid. See you at dawn. Tiny coordinated logistics. Who would park where? How to create a complete blockade without actually breaking any laws. We'll stagger the bikes in a V formation, he explained, drawing on a napkin. Put the big touring bikes at the front. They're wider, harder to get around. Choppers on the sides. And Sparky, You get those semi-trucks at the rear. If anyone tries to reverse out, they'll hit a wall of Peterbilt. Sparky grinned. Jimmy's sending 3 trucks. One of them's got a full load of steel beams. That thing weighs 40 tons. Perfect. At 3 a.m., Caleb finally went home to check on Leo. His son was still asleep, fever finally breaking. Caleb sat on the edge of the couch and brushed Leo's hair back from his forehead. I'm fixing it, buddy, he whispered. I promise. He thought about waking Leo, telling him what was about to happen. But no, let the kid sleep. Let him wake up to a world where justice had already been served. Back at the clubhouse by 4 a.m., Caleb found the place transformed. Bikes were pulling in from every direction. The parking lot was a sea of chrome and leather. Men he'd never met were shaking his hand, clapping his shoulder, telling him they'd ridden 5 hours to be here. A woman in her 50s, president of the Black Widows, found him near the bar. Her name was Razor, and she had more tattoos than skin. I got 2 grandkids, she said simply. Both of them are on the spectrum. I know what it's like when the system fails them. She handed him a folded piece of paper. My lawyer's number. Anything goes sideways today, you call him. He'll bury the school district in lawsuits. I can't pay. Did I ask for money? This is about principle, ironclad. They fuck with kids, they answer to all of us. By 5 a.m., Henderson Road was lined with motorcycles. The chrome reflected the streetlights like a river of molten metal. Caleb stood at the center of it all, looking at the assembled mass of bikers, at least 300, maybe more. Some he knew, most he didn't, but they were all here for the same reason. Dutch climbed onto the roof of a pickup truck and raised his hands. The crowd quieted. Brothers and sisters, he called out, his voice carrying in the pre-dawn air. Today we make a statement. Not with violence, not with threats, but with our presence, with our unity. We're here to show that when the system fails our children, we don't fail them. He pointed down the road. That bus comes through at 6:30. When it does, I want every engine running. I want the noise so loud they hear it in the next county. I want that driver to see us and understand. This is what happens when you leave a kid behind. The crowd roared. Caleb checked his watch. 5:47 a.m. The sun was starting to rise, painting the eastern sky in shades of orange and red. In 90 minutes, Mr. Barnaby Grist was going to have the worst day of his life. At 6:15 a.m., Mr. Barnaby Grist sat in his driveway, sipping his coffee and feeling rather pleased with himself. Yesterday's little incident with the Vance kid had been bothering him, not out of guilt, but out of annoyance. He'd gotten a voicemail from some angry man, probably the father, demanding to speak with a supervisor. But the office had backed him up. Bus drivers have schedules to keep. If students can't be punctual, that's not our problem. Besides, he thought, taking another sip of coffee, maybe it'll teach the kid some responsibility. Lord knows his biker trash father isn't teaching him anything useful. Grist had been driving school buses for 18 years. 18 years of snotty kids and entitled parents and not nearly enough respect for the service he provided. But he had his small revenges. The way he could make certain students' lives just a little bit harder. The way he could pull away from the curb a little faster when kids he didn't like were running. Small things. Things that made him feel powerful. At 6:25, he climbed into his bus and started the engine. The familiar rumble soothed him. This was his kingdom. This 40-foot vehicle full of children who had to obey his rules. He pulled onto the road, heading toward his route's starting point. The morning was clear, crisp, perfect driving weather. At 6:38, he turned onto Henderson Road. That's when his perfect morning ended. At first, Grist thought there'd been an accident. He could see vehicles ahead, lots of them, blocking the road. His foot moved toward the brake. Then he saw what the vehicles actually were. Motorcycles. Hundreds of motorcycles. They were parked diagonally across both lanes, creating an impenetrable wall of chrome and steel that stretched from one side of the road to the other. Behind the motorcycles stood men and women in leather cuts, arms crossed, faces hard as the machines they rode. And standing at the front of the formation, directly in the center of the road, was Caleb Vance. Grist's coffee cup slipped from his hand, spilling across his lap. He didn't notice. He was too busy staring at the scene ahead, his brain struggling to process what he was seeing. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not over some kid who. The realization hit him like a fist to the gut. This is about yesterday. His hands, suddenly slick with sweat, fumbled for his phone. He needed to call the police. This was illegal. This was intimidation. This was... Every single motorcycle engine roared to life at once. The sound was apocalyptic. It wasn't just noise. It was a physical force, a wall of thunder that rattled the bus windows and vibrated through Grist's bones. 300 engines, all revving in perfect synchronization, creating a sound that could have raised the dead. Grist's hands were shaking so badly, he dropped his phone. Through the windshield, he could see Caleb walking toward the bus. Slowly, deliberately. Behind him, the sea of bikers parted like water, creating a path. "Oh God," Grist whispered. "Oh God, oh God, oh." His foot found the brake pedal. The bus lurched to a stop, still 50 yards from the blockade. Behind the bus, more motorcycles were pulling up, cutting off any chance of reversing. Grist was trapped. A knock on the door made him jump. But it wasn't Caleb, it was a woman. She was maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair and a leather cut that read Black Widow's MC. "Open the door," she called out, her voice carrying easily over the engine noise. I can't." "Open the door." Grist's hand moved on its own, pulling the lever. The door hissed open. The woman didn't climb aboard. She just stood on the first step, looking at him with an expression of pure contempt. "You've got kids on this bus?" Grist's mouth worked soundlessly. "Answer me. Do you have children on this bus right now?" "And no. This is my first stop. I haven't picked anyone up yet." "Good." She turned and shouted to someone outside. "Bus is empty." The engines didn't quiet, but they dropped to an idle, still loud enough to make conversation difficult, but no longer deafening. Then Caleb was there, climbing onto the bus. He moved slowly, almost casually, like he had all the time in the world. In his hand, he carried a small blue backpack. Grist recognized it immediately. Leo's backpack. "Mr. Grist," Caleb said, his voice quiet but somehow cutting through the noise. "Step off the bus, please. I have to call my supervisor." "Step off the bus." Something in Caleb's eyes, something cold and final, made Grist obey. His legs barely held him as he stood up, as he shuffled past this monster of a man who'd somehow summoned an army overnight. Outside, Grist realized just how surrounded he was. 300 bikers, all watching him. All silent now, their engines idling. Behind the motorcycles, he could see more vehicles pulling up. News vans, cameras. Someone had called the media. "Mr. Grist," Caleb said, stepping down from the bus. "Let me introduce you to some people. This is Razor, president of the Black Widows. That's Dutch, president of the Gravel Kings. Over there is Ripper from the Road Devils." He gestured to the assembled crowd. "And these are fathers, mothers, grandparents. People who understand what it means to protect children." Grist's knees were shaking. I don't know what you think I did." Caleb held up the blue backpack. "Yesterday, at approximately 3:20 p.m., my 8-year-old son ran for this bus in a thunderstorm. You saw him. He was 20 feet away. And you closed the door and drove away. He was late. I have a schedule. He walked 3 miles home in the rain. He has a fever. His hearing aids are destroyed." Caleb's voice never rose, never wavered. "He's 8 years old, Mr. Grist. He has a disability. And you left him in a storm." I didn't." "You did. And when I called the school, they hid behind rules and procedures and told me there was no proof." Caleb looked around at the assembled bikers. "So I thought, if they want to talk about rules and schedules and procedures, maybe we should have our own demonstration. Show them what our community looks like when someone threatens our children." In the distance, Grist could hear sirens. Police. Thank God. They'd arrest these lunatics, and he'd. "The police are on their way," Caleb said, as if reading his thoughts. "And I'm glad, because I want them to hear this on record." He raised his voice, speaking not just to Grist, but to the cameras, to the crowd, to everyone. "This is not a threat. This is not violence. This is 300 citizens exercising our right to peaceful assembly. We are blocking a public road to make a point. When the system fails to protect children, the community will." A police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. The officer who got out was young, maybe mid-20s. He took one look at the scene and his hand instinctively moved to his radio. "Easy, officer," Dutch called out. "We're not here to cause trouble. We're here to have a conversation about child safety." The officer, his name tag read Torres, approached cautiously. "You're blocking a public road. That's protected assembly under state law." Hack interjected, stepping forward with a folder. I have the relevant statutes right here. We're not damaging property. We're not threatening anyone. We're making a statement. Torres looked at the folder, then at the crowd, then at his radio. Grist could see the calculation happening. Am I really going to try to arrest 300 bikers? Let me call my sergeant, Torres said finally. Another car pulled up, a sedan, unmarked. A woman in a business suit got out, her face tight with stress. Grist recognized her, Martha Henderson, the school district's transportation supervisor. What is the meaning of this? She demanded, striding toward the crowd. You're preventing a school bus from what? Caleb interrupted. From picking up students? Like your driver prevented my son from getting home yesterday. Henderson's eyes widened. Mr. Vance, I understand you're upset, but this is not the appropriate venue. Really? Because I tried the appropriate venue. I called your office. I was told there was no proof, no incident report, no accountability. Caleb's voice carried across the crowd. So I brought my own witnesses. 300 of them. A news reporter pushed through the crowd, camera rolling. Mr. Vance, can you tell us what happened? And Caleb did. In calm, measured tones, he explained the whole story. Leo's disability. The months of bullying on the bus. The rain. The fever. With each word, Grist felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes pressing down on him. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he had rules to follow, that the kid should have been faster, that. Is that true? Henderson asked, turning to him. Her face had gone pale. Did you see Leo Vance at the bus stop and leave anyway? Grist's mouth opened and closed. He was late. Did you see him? The silence stretched. Behind Henderson, the news camera was rolling. Around him, 300 bikers waited. Yes, Grist whispered. But he should have been on time. The crowd's reaction was immediate, a rumble of anger, engines revving slightly. Henderson's expression hardened. Mr. Grist, you're suspended effective immediately. I'll be recommending termination. You can't. I can and I will. This is a PR nightmare, and more importantly, it's a violation of our duty of care. She turned to Caleb. Mr. Vance, I apologize. This should never have happened. An apology doesn't fix my son's hearing aids. Doesn't make his fever go away. I understand. We'll cover the medical expenses and the cost of new hearing aids. And I'll personally ensure that every driver in our district undergoes retraining on disability accommodations. Not good enough, Razor said, stepping forward. We want policy changes. Written guarantees. Every driver should have a duty to wait for students with disabilities. And there should be a parent complaint system that actually works. Henderson looked overwhelmed. I can bring that to the board. You do that, Dutch said. And we'll be at that board meeting. All of us. Torres's radio crackled. Grist couldn't hear the words, but he saw Torres's shoulders relax. Sergeant says as long as you clear the road within the hour and there's no violence, we're not pressing charges for the assembly. Fair enough, Caleb said. He turned to address the crowd. We made our point. Let's go home. The bikers began mounting their motorcycles. Engines roared to life again, but this time it wasn't threatening. It was triumphant. As the crowd began to disperse, Caleb walked back to Grist one last time. He held out the blue backpack. This is Leo's. He left it on the bus 3 weeks ago. You never gave it back to him. Caleb's voice was low, almost gentle. From now on, every time you think about cutting corners, about making a kid's life harder just because you can, I want you to remember this moment. Remember what it felt like to be surrounded by 300 people who think you're a coward. He walked away, leaving Grist standing alone in the middle of Henderson Road, holding a child's backpack, as news cameras captured his shame for posterity. Martha Henderson's phone hadn't stopped ringing since the moment she'd arrived at the scene. The superintendent, the board president, local news stations, even a state senator who'd somehow caught wind of the story. All of them wanted to know the same thing. How did we let this happen? Standing in the middle of Henderson Road, watching 300 motorcycles slowly pull away, Martha had no good answer. The truth was embarrassing. They'd ignored a parent's complaint because it came from someone they saw as trouble. Because Caleb Vance wore a leather cut and had tattoos and didn't fit their image of an appropriate parent. Now that prejudice had blown up in their faces, literally broadcast on live television. Mr. Grist, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Come with me. Now. Grist stumbled after her, still clutching Leo's backpack like a shield. His face was blotchy, streaked with tears and sweat. He'd pissed himself at some point. Martha could smell it, and his hands shook like leaves. They walked to her car, past news cameras and bikers and gawking early morning commuters who'd stopped to see what the commotion was about. "Get in," Martha ordered, unlocking the doors. Once they were inside, away from prying eyes and cameras, she turned to face him. "Explain to me, and I want the truth, Barnaby, why you left an 8-year-old disabled child at school in a thunderstorm." "I didn't mean." "The truth." Grist flinched. "He's always slow, always holding up the schedule. And his father, that biker, he's always watching me like I'm some kind of criminal. I'm just doing my job. The kid needs to learn punctuality. So you taught him a lesson by leaving him in a storm." I thought someone at the school would." "You didn't think at all." Martha's voice was ice. "You saw a child with a documented disability, and you made a decision to punish him. Not because he was late, because you didn't like his father." Grist's chin quivered. "I've been driving for 18 years. 18 years without a single complaint." "That's not true, actually." Martha pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails. "I did some digging after Mr. Vance's initial call. Turns out we have 17 complaints about you over the past 5 years. 17. All dismissed without investigation because you claimed the parents were troublemakers or the kids were exaggerating." She looked up. "Want to guess what those 17 families have in common?" Grist said nothing. "They're all working class. Single parents. Immigrant families. People who don't have the time or resources to fight the bureaucracy. People who thought they had no power." Martha's laugh was bitter. "Turns out they had plenty of power. They just needed to organize." "What's going to happen to me?" "You're fired. Effective immediately. I'll be recommending the district file charges for child endangerment. And honestly, I hope Mr. Vance sues you personally. I hope every one of those 17 families sues you. Because this ends now. But my pension. Should have thought of that before you turned a bus into your personal fiefdom." Martha started the car. "I'm taking you back to the depot. You'll clean out your locker under supervision. Then you're banned from district property. If I ever see you near a school again, I'll call the police myself." The drive was silent except for Grist's occasional sniffles. Martha felt no pity. She'd spent 20 years in education, fighting to protect kids, and men like Grist were the reason that job was so damn hard. At the depot, word had already spread. Other drivers watched in silence as Grist cleaned out his locker. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked relieved, like maybe they'd been waiting for someone to finally hold Grist accountable. When he was done, Martha walked him to the parking lot. "One more thing. Leo Vance's father didn't hurt you today. He could have. Do you understand that? He could have had 300 bikers drag you off that bus, and no one would have stopped them. But he didn't. Because he's a better man than you gave him credit for." Grist's car, a 15-year-old sedan with a faded paint job, sat alone in the corner of the lot. He shuffled toward it, broken, humiliated, unemployed. Martha watched him drive away, then pulled out her phone and called Caleb Vance. He answered on the second ring. "Yeah. Mr. Vance, this is Martha Henderson. I wanted to let you know that Mr. Grist has been terminated. I'm also personally apologizing for how your initial complaint was handled. It was unacceptable." A pause. "Is my son safe on the buses now?" "He will be. I'm implementing a complete overhaul of our disability accommodations. And I'm creating a parent advocacy committee, one that actually has teeth." "Good. Thank you. Mr. Vance, what you did today was..." She searched for the right word. "Illegal, terrifying, and probably the most effective parent activism I've ever seen." She could hear the smile in his voice. "We just wanted to make sure our kids are protected." "You did. Trust me, every driver in this district now knows what happens when they mistreat a student." After hanging up, Martha sat in her car for a moment, thinking about power. About how the system was supposed to protect children, but sometimes, too often, it protected the wrong people instead. Today, the Gravel Kings had reminded everyone who the real priority should be. She hoped the lesson stuck. By noon, the story had gone viral. #HeavyMetalJustice was trending on social media. News stations across the state were running footage of the blockade. The image that kept getting shared was a still photo of Caleb Vance standing in front of 300 motorcycles, arms crossed, looking like some kind of avenging angel made of leather and chrome. The comment sections were predictably divided. "This is what happens when you mess with bikers' kids." "Respect." "Illegal assembly." "They should all be arrested." Maybe if the school had done its job, this wouldn't have been necessary. That bus driver is lucky they only blocked a road. In my day, he'd be in the hospital. Inside the Gravel Kings clubhouse, Caleb sat at the bar, his phone buzzing every few seconds with messages. News requests. Interview invitations. Someone from a podcast wanted to talk about vigilante parenting. He ignored them all. You're famous, Sparky said, sliding a beer across the bar. Probably could write a book at this point. Don't want to be famous. I just wanted my kid to be safe. Dutch emerged from his office, grinning. Just got off the phone with our lawyer. The DA reviewed the footage and decided not to press any charges. Said it was protected assembly, no property damage, no threats. We're clean. Good. Caleb took a sip of beer. How's the kid? Fever broke this morning. He's asking when he can go back to school. Monday, probably. Henderson promised me a new driver for Route 12. Someone who's actually trained in disability accommodation. Think they learned their lesson? Caleb thought about Grist's face. The terror, the shame, the realization that his small-time bullying had consequences. Yeah, I think they did. The clubhouse door opened. Razor walked in, followed by a dozen members of the Black Widows. Heard you're buying drinks to celebrate. Did I say that? You're saying it now. She slapped a hand on the bar. We rode 5 hours to watch that bastard piss himself. Least you can do is buy us around. Caleb laughed, the first real laugh he'd managed in days. Fair enough. As the clubhouse filled with bikers from a dozen different clubs, all celebrating their victory, Caleb's phone buzzed one more time. This message, he opened. It was from Leo's teacher, Mrs. Henderson. Just wanted you to know Leo's classmates saw the news. They think his dad is a superhero. Hope that's okay. Caleb smiled and typed back. That's perfect. By Monday morning, the story had evolved. The school board held an emergency meeting and unanimously voted to implement the policy changes Martha Henderson had proposed. Every bus driver would undergo mandatory retraining. A parent advocacy hotline was established, and a clause was added to district policy explicitly protecting students with disabilities from being left behind under any circumstances. The local news ran a follow-up piece titled Community Activism or Intimidation, but the public opinion was overwhelmingly on Caleb's side. Parents, especially working-class parents, flooded social media with their own stories of being dismissed by school bureaucracies. For his part, Grist disappeared from public view. Rumor had it he'd moved to another state, though no one could confirm. What was confirmed, no other school district would hire him. The footage of him breaking down in front of 300 bikers had made him unemployable in education. Some people said that was too harsh, that he'd made a mistake and didn't deserve to have his life ruined. The bikers disagreed. 2 weeks later, on a sunny Tuesday morning, Caleb pulled up to Leo's school on his motorcycle. Leo sat behind him on a custom-made seat Sparky had installed, smaller, with extra padding and a safety harness. The other parents at drop-off stared, some nervously, others with something that looked like respect. Okay, buddy, Caleb said, helping Leo off the bike. You good? Leo nodded, adjusting his new hearing aids, top of the line, paid for entirely by the school district as part of their settlement. Dad, yeah. Thanks. For everything. Caleb knelt down so they were eye level. You don't need to thank me for protecting you. That's what dads do. He tapped Leo's chest gently. But you need to promise me something. Next time someone treats you badly, and there might be a next time, you tell me right away. No more protecting me. Deal. Deal. They did their special handshake, 3 taps, 1 fist bump, 1 pinky swear. Then Leo ran toward the school building, his backpack bouncing. As Caleb stood up, he heard a familiar sound, a diesel engine. The new school bus, number 12, pulled into the parking lot. The driver was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. When she saw Caleb, she waved and gave him a thumbs up. Caleb returned the gesture. The bus doors opened, and kids started filing on. Caleb watched carefully, making sure everyone was treated well, making sure the driver waited patiently for a girl with crutches to board. Satisfied, he climbed back on his motorcycle. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he passed a man in a sedan, some corporate type in a suit, dropping off his kid. The man gave Caleb a wide berth, his expression wary. Caleb just smiled. Let them be wary. Let them remember what happens when you mess with the king's kids. On the highway, heading toward work, Caleb's phone buzzed in his pocket. At a red light, he checked it. Dutch had sent a group text. Chapter meeting tonight. We're getting requests from other parents. Apparently, we started something. Boomer, good. About time someone stood up to these bureaucrats. Tiny, I got 3 different schools asking for our services. Think we should make this official? Sparky, Gravel King's community advocacy. Has a nice ring to it. Caleb thought about it as the light turned green. Thought about all those other kids out there. The ones with disabilities, the ones from poor families, the ones whose parents didn't have the time or resources to fight back. He typed, I'm in. But we do it right. No violence. Just presence. Show them what community power looks like. Dutch, that's my sergeant. See you tonight. As Caleb accelerated onto the highway, the wind rushing past him, the motorcycle's engine rumbling beneath him like a heartbeat, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that they'd started something that could actually change things. That they'd shown other parents they didn't have to accept their kids being mistreated. That power didn't just belong to people in suits and offices. It belonged to anyone willing to stand up and say enough. Behind him, the city was waking up. Ahead, the road stretched out endless and open. Caleb twisted the throttle and rode toward whatever came next. Because that's what kings did. They protected their kingdom. And in this kingdom, every child mattered. Since the Henderson Road incident, parent complaints to the Rochester School District have increased by 400%. But unlike before, those complaints are being heard. The Gravel Kings MC, now formally registered as a community advocacy organization, has attended 17 school board meetings, advocated for 12 families, and helped implement policy changes in 4 districts. Bus driver training protocols have been adopted statewide, with mandatory modules on disability accommodation and cultural sensitivity. And Leo Vance. He's doing well in school, according to his teacher. His classmates voted him most likely to have the coolest dad. When asked for comment, Caleb Vance said simply, "We're just fathers who wanted our kids to be safe." Turns out a lot of other parents wanted the same thing. We just showed them they didn't have to fight alone. This is Jennifer Morrison, reporting from Rochester. Remember, the road belongs to everyone. Make sure everyone gets to ride it safely.